Okay, as you can see, I'm back with another tutorial. This is the furnace tutorial. This is part one of that tutorial. Excuse me. Um, Much like the crafting table tutorial, we're going to break this into a few pieces. As you can see, this is part one. Um, we're going to start with the mod class. And in the mod class, much like the crafting table tutorial, we have some things here we need to pay attention to. First off is the mod ID again. This and your instance must match, your mod ID and your instance. There's a reason for that. You're going to need it in the block class. It will be there to get the instance of the mod class. It will also be there for getting your GUI ID, which I've explained to you in the crafting table tutorial. I will go over that and post any necessary code in the post on the forum. Please refer to the forum. The link will be in the description for any questions or any issues that you may have. However, there really shouldn't be any issues. This is a very basic mod. It's something that even I in the beginning couldn't figure out till it was shown to me. But it is quite easy. There's nothing extremely complicated about making a basic furnace. Just like the crafting table, it's pretty basic. Mostly all you're doing is recreating something already in the game. You just want it to handle the things that you want it to handle and nothing else. Um, I will go over every class that is important and necessary for the basic furnace. I will then make tutorials for the expansions of the furnace later at another time when I have time. Um, I'm working quite regular now, and my job schedule, my home life, and everything else limit my time to these things. So be patient. Please view carefully these tutorials. There is really nothing complicated about doing the basic furnace or crafting table. All you really have to do is copy the vanilla code. And I'm probably going to say that quite a few times in this tutorial because essentially that's all you're doing is recreating something in the game, and you really need to understand that if you have the code there at your disposal, you should really be using it. You shouldn't rely on someone like myself or anyone else that makes tutorials to give the code to you. If you're going to mod, you're going to need to know that you have to be able to at some point understand enough of the code and be able to manipulate them. There are users on the forum that give you great links to Java tutorials and various other tutorials that you can use that have helped me greatly and also can help you. You just need to understand that if you make a mistake, you can undo those mistakes, and making mistakes is part of learning. So, without further ado, let's get started on this tutorial. The mod ID and the instance. Okay, they must match, as I said. You're going to need the GUI handler. You're going to need to create that. And in a mod class, you should have already created your blocks. And if you're using a config file, your block IDs. That should be basic stuff that you should already know how to do. Um, the furnace has two blocks. Unlike the crafting table, which only has one block, this has two. So you're going to need a block at the idle state, and you're going to need a block at the active state, which you can see I have them both here. You're not going to want to call this furnace or in any way referencing the actual furnace in the game. You could run into problems. So as you can see, I have here, I've named mine Smoker. You want to make sure your proxy, your cited proxy, is the actual file path of your mod. That should already be done, and you should already know how to do that if you know how to make a mod class. If you're doing this in Forge, there are plenty of tutorials that explain how to make the mod class. This is my config file. This is where everything is going to be generated from. So this is my idle ID and my active ID. So as you can see, I have them here. I've not created my block yet. Well, I did create the block. However, as you can see, it's red underlined, and you'll see why in a few moments. The idle state, you need to have your ID and a secondary ID, which is a boolean, and when it's inactive or idle, it will be false, and when it's active, it will be true. You need to make sure that both of these extend or are from the same block, the block Smoker, as you only need one class to handle both states of the block. You want to make sure that your unlocalized name are both the same. And you want to set your creative tab here in the mod class. That way you don't run into issues later where both of your blocks are showing up in your creative menu, and it's just you're going to have some issues there. Okay, so you want to make sure that everything is handled in a proper location, or in a location where it's not going to cause issues for you later on. This is how I do mine. I don't expect you to do it the same way. If you know a better way, then by all means. This is just the way I do it. You want to register both of those blocks. Your active and inactive blocks, both are blocks, and they need to be registered. However, you only need to add the name of your idle block. That will also help allow only your idle block to show up in your creative menu. You're going to want to register a tile entity. It's underlined right now because I have not created it. You want to make sure you have a recipe. You can add a recipe here. I have one already created. And then here's another part that I will get into at the end, at the very last step of this tutorial, because in the hotbar or your inventory, okay, when you create blocks as of 1.5, they are facing the wrong direction. I don't know why. That is the way they're being done now. So you need to make a new render class to handle the direction of the block in your active inventory or your hotbar, whichever you want to call it. Okay, you should already have your proxies pre-set up. So we're going to go ahead right now and make our block class. And as you can see, I have my block class, and it is empty. And the reason it's empty, and the reason I keep saying about the vanilla source code, is simply because you can go and look at the block furnace. You can completely copy that. You can just go right here and copy this entire class all the way down. You can copy that. We can get rid of that. We no longer need the vanilla class open, and we can paste that right into our class. Okay, now what you're going to want to do is look at all your imports, because there are some that you're going to need to remove. First of all being, you're going to want to change this and rename it to your block class, obviously. And here's something new, the extending block container. That is because you're going to need a tile entity for your block. You're going to want to delete the tile entity furnace from this class, your new class, or you're going to have issues. You also want to look and see if there's any other references here, the block furnace or anything else, which I do not see, and we should be good after we remove that one import. And we can go through this, and as you can see, we have all of these finals. These you got random, you got your boolean for your active state. You can actually leave those just for the purpose of trying to follow along and keep yourself straight with what you're going to recreate. You can change all that later. Like I could change this to keep smoker inventory and smoker rand if I really wanted to. But just for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and leave it. And we're also going to want to change this. When the block is broke, we want to change that to dropping our block and not anything else. So we're going to go ahead and change that to our block. Okay, and it's going to be the idle block. You don't want it to drop the other block that's active. You want to make sure you mark this and get it right. Now, a lot of people are having issues with the setting the direction and having issues with the icons not changing like these. And in my next part of this tutorial, when I get to the icons being done and I wrap this tutorial up all the way, we're going to go ahead and change these to our icons, but for now I'm leaving them as they are. And as you can see here, we have some other things like tile entity furnace. Well, we removed the import, so obviously they are red underlined. We want to change them to our tile entity, which, as I said, is not created yet. We're going to create that in the next part of this tutorial. You want to change all these. To your active and idle blocks. You want to leave all of this because this is working code. As I said, you are recreating something that's already in the game. Just copy it and make those minor adjustments that you're going to need. It's not something that should be as complicated as some people are making it. And I don't quite understand. I mean, I've said it time and time again in the forum to please view your source code that you have in front of you. The source code is there for a reason, and you're creating something that's already there. So just, follow along and do it. That's the block class. And yes, we still have some red errors, but we will get to that in the next part. As I said, we'll do the tile entity in part 2. So bear with me and stay tuned for part 2.